We are going to go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining this afternoon. My name is Gretchen Myron. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a Director of Inclusion here at the NCAA. Welcome to the last of our 6 Emerging Sports for Women webinars. This one today is all about equestrian. We're super glad that you can join us to learn more about this sport and hope that this is helpful. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so if for any reason you need to drop off early today, or if you had a colleague that couldn't make it, we will be sharing these out in the coming weeks now that we're wrapping up, and you're welcome to help share this with others as well to get the word out about equestrian or to help answer any other questions that you may have. Joining me today from the Office of Inclusion is my colleague, Dr. Ash. I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Ash. I serve as the Assistant Director of Inclusion at the NCAA. I'm really excited to join you all today. Just a quick housekeeping item. There is a chat feature here. Please use that for any questions you may have for us. That's a good time throughout the webinar. You can post your questions, and we will be happy to answer those at the end of the webinar as well for you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ash. Before we dive into the sport of equestrian itself, we do want to provide just a little bit of background related to the Emerging Sports Program, as well as the Committee on Women's Athletics. So in case you are not familiar, the NCAA Emerging Sports for Women program was created in the early 1990s from a recommendation from the Gender Equity Task Force. The goal of the program really was to try to close the participation gaps that continue between men's and women's sports. And so creating new pathways of opportunity for women's sports and women's participation was one way that schools could sponsor these new opportunities and potentially have more women competing on their campuses. The goal of the program really is also to move these emerging sports to NCAA championship status. So far, since the program's beginning, 5 sports have made that transition, which you can see on the screen. The most recent one that you may be familiar with is beach volleyball, which transitioned in 2015. We do currently have another emerging sport, women's wrestling, that is moving through that process, so we hope to make that number 6 very shortly. The program is overseen by the NCAA Committee on Women's Athletics. This is a committee that has representatives from all 3 divisions. Their goal as the Committee on Women's Athletics is to help monitor and advise the different divisions on information related to women in sports. They spend a lot of time working with the current emerging sports and also reviewing any applications that come in. Each year, they receive biannual updates from each of the 6 emerging sports about their progress and have the opportunity to provide feedback to the sports about potential growth opportunities or ask other questions to help them continue to grow. In addition to equestrian, which we'll be talking about more in just a moment, there are 5 other current NCAA emerging sports for women. Those are acrobatics and tumbling, rugby, stunt, triathlon, and women's wrestling. With that, we would love to turn it over to our equestrian experts, who you really want to hear from today. We have Dr. Leah Fiorentino and Lynn Hickey, both from the National Collegiate Equestrian Association, that are here to talk more about equestrian. Leah and Lynn, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be able to introduce all of you to Lynn Hickey, who is the incoming Deputy Director of the National Collegiate Equestrian Association. She'll be working directly with Samantha, excuse me, who is moving into the role of Executive Director here for the NCEA. And as most know, the NCEA is the group that's been charged by our national governing body, the United States Equestrian Federation, with oversight of the sport of NCAA equestrian while it's still in the emerging sport pipeline. So we are super excited. We've been working on this for quite a few years. And we're hoping that Samantha and Lynn are going to get the sport across the finish line and meet that daunting threshold of 40 schools. So Lynn, you can jump on, say hi, or we can just keep rolling.
All right, just very briefly, thank you, Leah, for the introduction. And thanks to all our viewers. I'm very excited about joining and being of support of this organization and looking forward to really helping them continue to be very successful and to grow the sport. I will officially be on board really the first week of September, but really look forward to communicating with anyone that we can be of help to. So Leah has all the information and we're going to turn it over to her to give you an overview. Thank you.
Terrific. I guess we can go to the next slide. That's our hype video for last year's NCEA National Championship that we hosted on behalf of NCAA Equestrian. And SMU won the national championship for the second year in a row. And that was all about the celebration. Our championship is a phenomenal event that happens every April at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala, Florida. And as we've seen with the growth of all the women's sport media coverage this past year, equestrian is no stranger to big crowds. At our national championship, just as a side note, we had over 2,000 spectators in the stands watching these women compete. It's a phenomenal, exciting environment to be in. And the student athletes and the fans are just terrific. So let's talk a little bit about some details on equestrian. As Gretchen mentioned, the emerging sport process began in the early 1990s. In the late 1990s, the NCAA came to the national governing body and said, gee, equestrian looks like a sport that would be really suited for a collegiate environment. A large percentage of all junior competitors are excuse me, are women. And what a perfect matchup for it. That was back in 1998, 99, when the first conversations occurred about equestrian and working with the national governing body. It went from there to a small group of administrators who pounded the pavement and met the initial thresholds that were needed to be sponsored as an emerging sport in Division I, followed shortly afterwards by Division II, and we're still working on Division III to this date. So our sports sponsorship information, and we're a year out on this, so we're hoping that this number goes up a bit, but we do have 19 Division I teams, 3 Division II teams, and 26 Division III teams who, as I mentioned, are not recognized as an emerging sport yet, but are on their sports sponsorship data. There are over 15,000 PSAs in the equestrian pipeline pathways. So those come out of very organized professional associations in both jumping seat, which for those of you who are not familiar with the equestrian sport, the jumping seat has 2 events in it, and it has a flat phase, which looks like the dressage that Snoop Dogg was out watching, and an over fence phase. And we also have a recruiting base that comes through the organizations that support Western riding in those 2 events, which are horsemanship and reining. So horsemanship is a little bit like dressage on a Western horse. They have a pattern that they go in and follow. And if you can think about Run for the Million, Reining is more like that type of a competition, very fast paced with lots of spins, and everyone's hooting and hollering and cheering for the women as they go around. So our our current teams, when they report in to our staff, note that our student athletes are ranking very high academically. They rank very high in community service hours, and they are in the top 5 of their campus athletic reports. In terms of roster flexibility, Division One is, I guess, soon to be under the roster cap of 50, but there's great flexibility in terms of roster size across all 3 divisions. Division One, obviously the number there is addressing the soon-to-be cap. Division Two is actually the average equestrian roster size, as is Division Three. So there's a little bit of differences in how those numbers are reported out. So again, Division One is the cap. Division Two and Division Three are based on average roster sizes that we've collected the data on. So maybe next slide. So as I mentioned, the recruiting base is very, very strong, and it comes through our USEF is our national governing body. The AQHA, NRHA, APHA, those are all shortened names for quarter horse associations, reining horse associations that feed into the Western rosters. The Interscholastic Equestrian Association is quite interesting. Those are programs that are affiliated with middle and high school equestrian programs. And they are growing in wildly expansive measures. Their latest data, I was on the board, so their latest data was, I believe, close to 14,000 members, which is huge. And in that context, those young riders are learning what it's like to be in a team environment. Obviously, in equestrian, it's usually just an individual performance that counts, but the Interscholastic Equestrian Association has looked at a model where they work in a team setting, earning points for their team based on their competition. So that's a pretty interesting addition in terms of pipeline and having those PSAs kind of ready for a team and community when they arrive at a college campus. So obviously our focused areas of growth are looking at things such as institutions with ag or ag business related academic minors. That helps just in terms of facilities and having the kind of the infrastructure on campus. Many of our new schools that have added are not in that category, and they look for facilities that are a bit off of campus. But when we find ag or ag business programs, they tend to have the facilities either right on campus or within a short, I don't know, bike ride for the student athletes. And of course, many institutions are looking for more roster flexibility to offer off to their men's program by carrying larger squads of women. There are over 300 current club teams that are participating in equestrian across the country. So of course, having those conversations with the leaders on those campuses has been especially important and has been a good focus point for us in looking at that growth and expansion opportunity. I think we can go to the next slide again. So what does competition format look like? So we work with a head-to-head competition format where a competitor from each team rides the same horse. And what's really important about that is that we've kind of leveled the playing field so that the piece of equipment that the two student athletes use is the same piece of equipment. If you can imagine having a tennis match where one student athlete had a graphite racket and the other student athlete had a wood one. It's kind of hard to look at things as being an equitable competition. So by having a rider from each one of the teams ride the same horse, be judged and scored for their ride, and then the student athlete with the highest score earns a point for her team. And we feel that this has been a real boost to making it a college sport, which is very different from how the industry competes. So we do have opportunities for schools that are just interested in the jumping seat events. And then there are schools that are interested in jumping seat and Western. So it can be 4 events in a competition, or it can just be 2 events in a competition if it's a single discipline focus. But there are 5 scoring competitors from each team. And we have plenty of opportunities for exhibition competitors, which are also judged and scored. And we have a 4-minute warm-up, which is different from some of the other college programs that you may see in your area, which we believe is very, very important because it allows the student athlete to have a chance to sit on the horse, move on the horse, gauge a little bit about their partner, their equine athlete, in terms of making sure that it's a safe partnership prior to going in for a competition. Our championship event, if we could, I wish there was a good word to mimic March Madness in April, but we work in a head-to-head single elimination bracket format, and it's incredibly exciting. We have a reveal day and we reveal our brackets and everyone's tuning in, and there's great excitement in terms of who's playing who, and we have a good time with that, a real good time. So I think we can go on again. So the general budgetary considerations, and Nancy and John will speak a little bit from a more informed administrative perspective on this, but we have some facilities that are owned by the institutions or some that are leased. It really depends, again, on what your individual institution has available. You do need a minimum of 1 competition arena, though. Now, our horses arrive on campus via donation or loan. Programs do not have to go out and purchase that piece of equipment. It arrives on your campus, and we have a pretty sophisticated network of former coaches who are connected into industry trainers. And when a new program comes on board, we're able to help locate good equine athletes to come join you on your campus. So you do need to be able to house the horses and feed the horses in terms of maintenance. And then you do need uniforms for your riders and obviously game day expenses related to travel. Horses do not travel. So if Georgia is competing against Texas A&M and they're at University of Georgia, they ride the horses from Georgia. When they have their home and home series and they go to Texas A&M, both teams ride the horses from Texas A&M. So the horses don't travel, with the exception of our national championship, and that goes out on bids, and horses are nominated and invited to be participants in our national championship. In terms of coaching education and our pipeline, we do have onboarding sessions for new coaches. And interestingly enough, as you would anticipate, the majority of our coaches are former student athletes. And that's just continuing to grow as we're able to add more volunteer coaches and graduate assistant coaches. And it's been a fantastic entry pipeline for those recent graduates out of our programs. So I think we can go to the next slide. So our national governing body collaboration, we oversee, I'm saying we, Lynn and the NCEA and Samantha will now be overseeing the collegiate sport of equestrian. And again, we are one of only 2 associations with this recognition. We believe very strongly in adhering to best practices in animal welfare, which is a requirement to be an education partner for the USEF. And we're also very concerned with protecting our student athletes. And we adhere to our national governing body's safe sport requirements. And those 2 things are what allows us to have our championship recognized by our national governing body. So we're very, very excited about that. In terms of new teams coming on, it really does vary by your institution and can be as quick as 9 months. We've had schools announce that they were going to launch a varsity D1 program in January and thought that they were going to need a whole year to onboard. And amazingly enough, in August, they had full rosters and they were ready to go. We've had other schools come and be members of the NCEA for a year, getting involved in the committee work and really learning a little bit more and doing some scrimmages and then coming on full board the next year. So it really does vary by the institution. And next slide. Okay, this is a great handoff to 2 of our rock star administrators. And there you go.
All right. Thank you, Leah. If I can ask Nancy and John to join us and introduce themselves, and then I have some follow-up questions for you.
Hi, everyone. Nancy Post. I am the Associate Athletics Director and Associate Athletics Director at Baylor University in Waco, Texas.
And I'm John Waters, the Director of Athletics here at the University of Lynchburg in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Thank you for joining us. Gretchen, if you can go to the next slide. Perfect. I just have my first question to you is if you can state some benefits of adding equestrian to your campus and sponsoring the sport on your campus.
Sure. I really look at equestrian. Baylor added the sport back in 2005. The 2005-2006 year was our first year of competition. But from my years of experience within this sport, what I've recognized is that equestrian can meet individual campuses' needs in a variety of ways. It is a very flexible sport, from roster flexibility, as Leah spoke of, the opportunity to have a dual discipline team or a single discipline team. It's a sport where across all of the sponsoring programs, there are those who fully fund their scholarship opportunities. And there are those that even, whereas Division III is non-scholarship, but there are other programs within Division II and Division I who are also non-scholarship. So it's very flexible in that you can make choices that are appropriate for your campus and your campus needs for adding an additional sport program. Really, there's a new and different donor base oftentimes when you add the sport of equestrian. Just the horse people of the world, you'll be surprised as to maybe alumni or people who have an affinity to your sport, to your university, who also have an affinity to the horse. And so a lot of times it brings a new population of donors to your university who not just support the equestrian program, but support other aspects of the university as well. That might just be their inroad into your school. I think also, as Leah referenced, very highly academic student athletes overall, very highly engaged in community service, very involved in SAC on our campuses. And then, kind of different is a lot of these student athletes have parents or families who have the capacity to financially support the campus programs initiatives. So oftentimes your own student athletes of that sport are your greatest donors to that sport. And also, as Leah commented, the equipment, the horse, back in the very beginning, I think Baylor ended up purchasing 2 horses, but we have not purchased a horse since then. So in about 18 years now, we have not purchased a horse, but we continue to grow our herd or transition our herd to, as we improve our stock or retire out horses from donations, which are tax deductible, and people love that aspect. Or horses who are loaned to us for the use of the horse within the program during the academic year. Again, a variety of ways that this sport can be what you need it to be on your campus. John, your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. I think from my perspective, this is an incredible, really unprecedented time in the history of higher ed. And so many of us as administrators and coaches are being asked to kind of walk on water and do all kinds of creative things financially, as well as with programming and those types of things. And really what equestrian has done for us at Lynchburg, we had an equestrian program on our campus in one shape or form since back in the 1980s. And the NCEA, really the head-to-head format, provided us an opportunity to grow kind of dynamically in a couple different ways. There are probably a lot of people that right now are either trying to find additional programming that might offer more opportunities for students and help kind of grow their student population. There are also people that are in a situation that may have been spending a lot of money on a specific sport like equestrian that are looking to say, okay, how can I resize or kind of refresh what we're doing, perhaps get into a little better spot. And the head-to-head format has really allowed both of those different things. We've been blessed at the University of Lynchburg. 2.5 years ago, we had 18 students that were equestrian students on campus. Today, we've got over 50 that are in our program and involved. And these are students from all around the country that have had amazing backgrounds and really bring a tremendous energy to our campus. We are a single discipline school as it relates to our NCEA competition. We compete against many Division I schools that are also single discipline, as well as a number of Division II, Division III schools throughout the country. So we're excited about how that's all fit. Culturally, the program is really, because of the ease of understanding the head-to-head scoring competition format, which is not your traditional horse show hocus pocus, for lack of a better way to say it. It's really been a lot of fun and created some great opportunities for fans to get involved in a couple different ways. So I believe that that's kind of the benefits of sponsoring. So Ash, I'm not sure if you wanted us to go forward to the next ones or how you want to
Yeah,
handle that.
yeah, that would be great. Starting a new sport on your campus can be a pretty daunting process. So I know you've had this sport for a long time on your campus. Are there any lessons you learned while sponsoring the sport, or anything that you might share as a cautionary tale that you wish you would have done differently? This is a great time for you to share that.
I guess I wasn't thinking about things we've done differently. I mean, I think you learn something new all the time. If you're not learning and growing in your program, any sport program, I mean, you certainly have to continue that everywhere along the way, especially in the very dynamic state of college athletics right now. We're always reshaping, retooling, trying to make sure that we're doing, the best we can for our student athletes, because without them, we would not have our sports. So I guess one of the things, again, I've been engaged in the sport for 19 years now. And the growth of the recruiting base is really, I think, what really stands out to me. It used to not be as common, I guess, if you will, for student athletes of high athletic ability in equestrian to necessarily go to college. A lot of them turned pro immediately out of high school. And we're seeing more and more of those very highly rated, high ability student athletes who are now becoming college athletes. And they're seeing the value in, continuing their career as a college athlete, earning a college degree, finding, a place for them in the world beyond college athletics. And then many of them do go on to continue as professionals upon graduation, but a very high graduation success rate in this sport.
So I could just quickly touch on the need to really just embrace and engage with the equine professionals in your area and your region. I think that as you begin to communicate that you're interested in that program or talking about starting one, people will come out of the woodwork to help and support you overall. I know Nancy touched on it a little bit, but we have found the more that we've done, the broader it has created, the broader circles it really has created with alumni and with new prospective families. There is an entire horse world out there, really in every region of the country, that is hungry for the opportunity to compete, to be recognized in a similar way as our other athletic programs. So really just that opportunity to embrace those in your general area will pay dividends.
Thank you. And lastly, are there any items that you would want schools to consider as they sponsor this sport on their campus that we have not talked about so far?
Well, I think, I know Leah mentioned it as well, but just the misconception that you have to purchase horses for the sport, you will not have to. The misconception that you travel horses to events, that is not part of the head-to-head format. And then, the importance of the NCEA, the National Collegiate Equestrian Association's involvement in the oversight of the sport of equestrian as an educational partner for of our national governing body, of U.S. Equestrian. Really, the membership there in the NCEA really ensures that our student athletes compete in settings compliant with safe sport, and those competitions adhere to best practices in animal welfare, which, it seems like a no-brainer, but I'm just saying that is certainly a point of emphasis. We have a national championship opportunity that is commensurate with the experience of peer student athletes of other sports for these young women. We recognize student athletes as all America, all academic, Elite Equestrian, which is, obviously styled after the NCAA's award. I believe it's Elite 90 now. An all championship team, Riders of the Year, Riders of the Month, distinguished alumni programs. We have an Equestrian Hall of Fame. We had the inaugural year this past April, where we had the inaugural class. We have, membership services that support our new programs, the coaches of our new programs. We pair them up with existing programs so that they have, a place to turn to, educational. We have a lot of people that pour into programs that are beginning their program to help get them off, on the right foot. And then one of our newest initiatives that we've started is an equestrian student athlete leadership group styled after SAC, which our equestrian young women are really excited about. So, and their opportunity to engage in the sport of equestrian, its growth, and its as it continues in the world of NCAA.
I think the only thing that I would have for the group is that I think that there are quite a few different ways to build a financial model to successfully sponsor a team and a program. There really are some very scalable elements related to it. In our world as a single discipline, we have found that really executing our entire equine program is very comparable to many of our other sports. I know there's a tendency for people that might be advocating for other different things to say, well, equestrian is so much more expensive than everything else. Let's look elsewhere. Let's do something different. There really is a great level of scalability regarding numbers of students, numbers of horses. And again, depending if you're really just trying to get involved for the first time with it, I would imagine that there's somebody in your geographic footprint that owns a barn and loves horses and loves promoting these different kinds of opportunities that might be a great advocate or partner with you that would help the financial pieces at least get off the ground in a great way. So that was my one takeaway.
Ash, may I add a comment too, please?
Of course.
Okay, I think just as John's speaking about and Nancy speaking about community collaboration on how people come out of the woodwork, I think for those schools that happen to be on a campus that there's a potential for academic collaboration, it would be an outstanding thing to work on. If you have an ag program, if you have animal science, if you have an equine program on campus, the number of things that can be done across the board with both the competitive program and those academic programs is pretty amazing, from research to just helping each other establish, your particular program. So for those schools that have that opportunity, and at this day and time in athletics, if you can ever find a way to collaborate academically on campus, that's a win-win. So if everybody would keep that in mind, that would be very helpful also. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, you can actually stay on if you'd like. I'm going to have Gretchen come on and she's going to navigate our Q&As. If anybody has any, please put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer those as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Great insights from our administrators. So thanks so much for sharing that. I think one of you noted, it's really nice to hear directly from you because you're sharing the actual experiences that you're having on those campuses to help with thinking about any of those misperceptions. So just appreciate that. We have a couple of questions to get started. And then as Ash mentioned, if you have others, please feel free to keep submitting them and we will get to them. One of the first ones that we wanted to ask was related to something that Nancy and John talked a little bit about, and then Leah, you also did in your remarks. So happy to point this to any of you, whoever wants to start with it. Can you talk some more about the difference of the type of discipline? So John, you mentioned being a single discipline institution. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like versus being a multidiscipline institution? And then a related question on that would be, has that been helpful to any of you in the recruiting pipeline for getting equestrian athletes that maybe have some different backgrounds as well?
Sure. The University of Lynchburg, we're in Central Virginia, which is great horse country. Jumping seat is really what we have done. We have kind of discussed adding Western a little bit, but not quite gone to that level yet. But just a very common kind of youth riding programs in Central Virginia are really based around jumping seat. And so we felt like that was our best route initially. As we kind of grew over the course of a couple different years, our actual competition group for NCEA is up to about 19 right now. And we still have other formats that our student athletes compete in. So 19 compete in the NCEA program, and then others compete in other programs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I was just going to say, Baylor participates as a dual discipline sport, a dual discipline equestrian program, meaning we have both jumping seat and Western student athletes. The Western student athletes compete in horsemanship and reining, and the jumping seat student athletes compete in fences and flat. So in a dual discipline meet format, there are equal opportunities. There are 5 riding positions in each of those 4 events. So the opportunity to have 20 points scored in a meet, as each one of those competitive opportunities, represents 1 point in the head-to-head format. For Baylor, at the time we added, all schools were really dual discipline. But we are part of the Big 12, and our Big 12 constituents that are members are all dual discipline, as is the SEC conference. Those schools are also dual discipline. In the ECAC conference, we have schools which compete in the dual discipline division, and then the ECAC also has a single discipline jumping seat only division. And so from a conference tournament standpoint, each of the conferences host their conference competition format is of their dual discipline or single discipline, whereas the ECAC will have a single discipline conference championship and a dual discipline conference championship. And then the ODAC, John, I believe that is just a single discipline conference championship.
That's correct. And throughout the year, we do compete at some schools that have dual disciplines. The larger schools have been wonderful in allowing us to come and compete against them. And also in most cases, bringing a third team in so that we could get in a great quality event right there, where basically 2 competitions for the price of 1.
Correct. And in that, what John references, when a single discipline school and a dual discipline school compete against one another, it is just in the single discipline format. So it's just the fences and flat events that the dual discipline squad, only the jumping seat portion of the dual discipline team will compete.
and Gretchen, if I could just add on to that, when the sport was originally conceived, created, guidelines were written, minimum participate numbers were established, it was with the notion that the sport was dual discipline. When I came on board, I have a affinity for the single discipline jumping seat schools. And I think it was probably 6 years ago, John, that we first started working on creating a pathway for single discipline schools to win a national title. And it has grown much to John's efforts over that time. But we did create that pathway, and it was, quite frankly, based on the number of club programs and interest in other collegiate formats that were only focused in that single discipline. So we wanted to create something that would encourage more schools to denote their sport as a varsity sport and provide those opportunities for the women on those single discipline programs.
Great. Thanks for that, Leah. And thanks so much, John and Nancy, for those explanations. I think that's really useful. One additional item that Nancy, you first brought up that I think is helpful and also something that's really awesome and unique about Equestrian is that conference level support from some of the different athletic conferences. Maybe John and Nancy in particular, can you talk about how useful that's been to supporting your program to also have a conference level championship for Equestrian?
Certainly. John, I'll let you start since you are the newest in the conference championship.
Sure. In the world of Division III, I mean, there are, 450, 60 Division III schools. The Old Dominion Athletic Conference has always sponsored an equestrian championship, since way back in the early 80s, I believe. It was only, recently that we adjusted the format and actually offered a head-to-head format as the conference championship. I think one of the great things in the Division III space is that our conference people are very focused and are using the conference dynamic as a vehicle to grow the head-to-head format opportunity. So traditional conference schools for us in Sweetbriar and Bridgewater that are close to us in proximity. And then last year we added both Swanee and Berry College. This year we're aware that Centenary is adding. There are also some great discussions with at least 2 or 3 others. So we feel like we're picking up a lot of momentum in the single discipline space, especially in Division III. And I think as people, realize that it is a very doable, concept, very, very easy to work together and provide these great opportunities. As long as people can see that pathway, then we think that they'll continue to come aboard.
Yeah. And I'll say from the conference perspective, that is one of the things as really working alongside Leah all these years, we were very determined to provide a postseason opportunity for every school sponsoring the sport of equestrian in the head-to-head format. And so with that mission, I mean, because years back when there were fewer schools participating, basically everybody went to the national championship event. It was more of an all-comers meet. And that's not the case any longer. You qualify, it's seeded, there's a bracket, there's a single discipline bracket, there's a dual discipline bracket now. And so not everyone goes to the national championship, but we wanted there to be opportunity for postseason competition for these student athletes that are so deserving. So I'm very proud of our conferences, of the Big 12, of the SEC, for really championing that concept and making that opportunity for these young women to have that postseason opportunity. And then the ECAC, we worked with them to have a place for schools that did not have a conference affiliation to have a home conference for the sport of equestrian. And the ECAC was just the perfect fit because, well, initially we had kind of a made up conference that we did just to give everyone a place, that we had a conference tournament. But then the ECAC came alongside us, and like they've done for so many other sports across the country, provided a home for these young women, for this sport, to have that postseason opportunity. So there's something to compete for after regular season, which we find, to be very exciting.
Gretchen, if I could just speak real quickly, the competitions are outstanding. And I think if those of you who are interested, if you will take the time to go and view a championship, not a championship, but just a regular dual competition or whatever, or certainly go to the championship, the level of athleticism that you're going to see will blow you away. I still have a hard time comprehending how these young women get on these huge animals that are beautiful animals, very well trained, and maybe have been on them in a warm-up for 4 or 5 minutes for the first time and can lead them through all this performance. It is outstanding. The young women do well in the classroom. They're great role models. They do great things in the community, but it is a beautiful sport. And for young women who often have spent years training for this, to give them an opportunity on the intercollegiate level is extremely important. So I hope everybody that's on this call will take a chance and go to a competition, and you'll be a fan. They will win you over.
Thanks, Lynn. Appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciated Leah as well in her introduction, talking more about that competition. It's really an interesting format. Certainly, to only have 4 minutes, like you said, to get to know a new horse and then try to do a whole different type of jumps with them. It's a lot. So we appreciate that as well. One other question we wanted to ask, I know we're getting a little bit close to time here. The competitions, just looking at those a bit more, they do have officials that are involved with that. Leah or Lynn, I don't know if you want to talk at all about anything that you all are seeing in the kind of that officiating pipeline as it relates to the NCEA. I know you talked about the great pipeline that you have in coaching with former student athletes, but just anything briefly you'd want to mention about the officials or what that looks like too.
Yeah, so all of our officials that we use during regular season as well as postseason are licensed by our NGB, as well as on the Western side, licensed by those Western professional organizations, and they go through significant amount of training and are required, as other sport officials are, to be constantly updated. We cull through the top judges that are ranked during the preseason, and they run through a vetting system to make sure that there are no conflict of interest. In terms, equestrian folks tend to be very closely connected. So we have to make sure that they haven't sold horses to any of the riders, and that they have not, they have no family relationships across those same types of concerns that we would have in any sport. And then those names are submitted. There's a additional vetting and voting process, and we contact them one whole actually 2 years out from the competition, and we do not use those 5 jumping seat officials and 5 Western officials at our national championship. We do not use them for the entire year preceding that national championship to avoid any perceptions of issues, and to make sure that a student athlete who is competing at a national championship hasn't been in front of that same judge at any point before. So we're kind of sticklers on that, but that's where our judging pool comes from.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. In the last few minutes, what we'd love to do, we've been doing this for our other webinars as well, is just to kind of wrap up or to talk about equestrian. If each of you could maybe come on and just, if you're able to, narrow it down to maybe one word that sums up what you think about equestrian, or just kind of your final message that you'd want to share with other administrators or colleagues that might be considering adding the sport. One word is hard, so we'll allow, a phrase, of course, or something else along those lines.
So for those smaller school programs that are struggling with enrollment issues on their campus, Equestrian provides an incredible set of new students to come to your campus. I could go on forever, but it's a matter of putting butts in seats for some of our colleges and universities across the country right now, and that enrollment decline gets squirrely a bit. Equestrian can make a significant difference. We've seen it happen already.
I was worried about one word and she used more. She used more. So I will say either inspirational or, forgive my, Eastern Virginia, it's doable. Either way, but it's very inspirational, as Lynn indicated, to be around this group of student athletes and really watch what they do. So inspirational.
I like what both Leah and John have said, and agree with both of those. I continue down the path of flexibility, meeting the need of the specific campus. Kind of meet you where you are.
Well, being the last person to speak and being a female, I'm going to use two words. One is collaboration. Way back in 1999, when I was the Senior Associate AD SWA at Texas A&M, we needed to add a sport. And it just so happened when we looked on campus, there was a club team that had 100 women already there. So you're talking about collaboration. I think a lot of you, if you'll be surprised if you research your area, your campus, there may already be a group there that's just ready to step in this competition. And then the other thing is the donor base. The kind of donors, the number of donors that, you would be amazed the number of people that have a horse that are just thrilled to give that horse to a program. So I would really look at those two different areas on how it could help your particular athletic program.
Great. Well, we are at the hour, and so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much again to Leah, Lynn, Nancy, and John, our administrators. We really appreciate you taking the time today to share your knowledge about equestrian. Thank you so much for everyone that was able to tune in today. This was recorded, and so we will be sharing this out with you all that were able to join, anyone who signed up, and a much wider audience as well. So please feel free to share this with others once you receive it, in case someone you know is interested and wasn't able to attend today. Thank you so much for your interest in the NCAA Emerging Sports for Women program and your support of equestrian. We hope everyone has a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks.